And what of the notion of conflicts of interest, or the motivation of scientists to be on one side or the other of this argument?
At the moment, it is fair to say that most climatologists would go along with the notion that there might be a climate problem. Very few have studied the question of whether there actually is a climate problem. It's a rather surprising thing. You always hear Al Gore saying 4,000 scientists contributed to the last UN report. Actually, only 50 scientists wrote the chapter that said that humankind was chiefly to blame for global warming, and another 53 disagreed with them. But the 53 who were the official reviewers who disagreed with them did not prevail, because it's not a properly peer-reviewed document, the IPCC, so the authors of the alarmist view prevailed over the reviewers who said there's no scientific evidence for this.
And is it arguable that these scientists are standing to benefit from grants and payments?
Of course they are. I mean, if I want to study, for instance, the lesser unspotted news interviewer, and I applied for a grant, then I would be told probably not.
Sounds like a terribly interesting subject.
But if I said the lesser spotted, or unspotted in your case, newsreader, in the context of global warming, they would be throwing money at me from all directions, because it's the fashionable thing at the moment. And the way these grant-giving bodies go, they are creatures of fashion. Now, most of these grant-giving bodies have never studied global warming, wouldn't know where to begin, wouldn't know what the fundamental equation of radiative transfer was if it hit them in the street, wouldn't know how to manipulate it, wouldn't see at once that what it tells you is that you need a very, very large change in radiative flux at the top of the atmosphere to obtain an extremely small change in temperature at the surface. And once you see that equation, basically any mathematician says, hey, there's no problem with the climate. But they wouldn't be able to do that, because most climatologists actually don't know very much math. They don't even know the fundamental equations that govern their subject. They don't have that kind of mind. The ones that do, if you go to, say, somebody like Professor Richard Lindzen at MIT, who's been studying the climate for a third of the century and knows more about it than anyone else in the world, if you ask him, does he believe that global warming is a global crisis, he'll say, no, of course not. Roy Spencer at the University of Alabama at Huntsville, or his colleague John Christie there, likewise will say the same. Fred Singer, who founded the Satellite Weather Service of the United States, doesn't believe a word of it. Bob Carter, one of the most eminent geologists in the world from Australia, doesn't believe it. There are thousands of scientists eminent in the field who don't believe it, and surprisingly few in the field who actually do believe it, because even the ones who say they do either haven't studied it and are merely going along with the fashionable majority, or they have studied it, in which case they know perfectly well there is no climate problem, but they find it expedient merely to lie to the effect that there is a problem, because there is no doubt the amount of money that's been thrown at climatology as a result of its successful manufacturing and maintenance of this scare has been huge. Just to take an example, the United States alone has been given $80 billion, the climate industry, $80 billion in just the last 20 years. And now, in the next 3 years, under Obama's stimulus package, it's being given another $80 billion. Well, hey, that's going to make an awful lot of climatologists very rich indeed. And their institutions, of course, their universities, and places like NASA, which has been retasked. It's no longer a space agency. It's now a climate monitoring agency. That is its new role. Where's
the counterbalance? Where is the sanity in this?
You may remember that great phrase from the Bible, Magna est veritas et prevalet, as the Latin Vulgate has it, and in the King James Version, great is truth and mighty above all things. And the truth alone is worthy of our entire devotion. Remember our blessed Lord when he was standing before Pontius Pilate, and the conversation was almost certainly conducted not in Aramaic and not in Greek, but in Latin. For our blessed Lord, of course, speaks all languages. The Latin of the day would not have been a problem for him. Pontius Pilate, of course, spoke his own language. And what did our blessed Lord say? He said, Ego in hoc natus sum, et ad hoc veni in mundum, ut testimonium per hibeam veritati. Unto this was I born, for this came I into the world, that I might bear witness to the truth. And that, if you like, is a wonderful manifesto, a wonderful mission statement for anyone engaging in the formation of public policy. And certainly when I worked for Margaret Thatcher, she would not have welcomed me making up science for the sake of pursuing a political agenda. What she wanted and expected from her policy advisors was that we should try to find and then put forward to her, so that she could put forward to the nation, the objective truth.
To that point about the truth and about distributing information that is factual,
Yes.
What's your experience been in the UK, and I know what our experience has been here with the press, with the media's either silence or their adherence to the dogma of the left on this subject?
I think the problem is the media are, of course, worldwide, largely in the control of the left, and increasingly of the extreme or communist left. The words liberal and progressive were coined by communists. When somebody calls themselves liberal or progressive, what they really mean is they're communist. And a lot of the media now are in all but name communist. That's the prevailing opinion, unfortunately. Now, the communists have never had any regard for the truth. You only have to look at Lysenko, for instance, who was a peasant in Soviet Russia under Stalin, who had the idea that if you were to soak seed grains over the winter in water, they would germinate more efficiently in the spring. There was no scientific basis for this. But the state decided that they were going to elevate this guy, because he was a peasant with an idea, to a pedestal on the National Academy of Sciences in Russia, because this showed how the great communist state could enable even peasants to make great scientific contributions. That became the consensus. Nobody in Russia was allowed to say anything otherwise. They went to jail or were killed if they suggested the opposite. Result, around 20 million starving Russians died because of that barking mad policy. I recently wrote to the BBC, it's just 2 weeks ago before I came across the pond. And I said to them, I just asked them a question. I said, when, in what major TV or radio news program did you last inform your viewers or listeners that for the last 9 years there has been rapid and statistically significant global cooling? And they were, of course, utterly unable to reply, because they have never told their viewers and listeners this. So now, embarrassed by this question, on their website just yesterday has appeared an article by a climate correspondent of whom nobody had previously heard, saying, well, it's very startling, you know, there doesn't appear to have been any global warming for the last 9 years. He hasn't quite got round to saying there's actually been rapid cooling, but it's a start. But it's only on the website. As far as I know, they still haven't broadcast it on the air. So what we're seeing is the deliberate withholding of the facts which would enable a reasonably well-informed viewer, listener, or reader of the media to be able to form an intelligent opinion. Instead, they're being told what opinion to take, and being told that there is no alternative to that opinion. Whereas the moment you tell them any of the facts, they begin to say, well, hang on, this doesn't stack up. It isn't true. And I think at some point we should move on to what is the scientific and economic truth on the global warming question, and how do we know?
You're watching a conversation with Lord Viscount Chirstopher Monckton on Minnesota Majority Report. And we'll continue with a conversation about the facts and the truth about the global climate issue.